Hey guys, I'm Urizi. This story is all about what if Sakura's character was rewritten. A rewrite of Sakura, in which a blunt and eccentric OC is placed into the body of Sakura Haruno at the start of the series. Nothing at all could possibly go wrong. Before we proceed with the story, please like and subscribe to this channel if you liked the video, and don't forget to check the description for the other works of the author if you liked the story. Let's start. Chapter 1, Prologue. I had signed my death warrant the moment I stepped onto that street. It honestly wasn't my fault, well, mostly. A quick glance left and right showed an empty street, well, at least empty from my point of view. I didn't take into account how the right side of the street curved sharply at a right angle, and then disappeared from view. I crossed the street at a sedate pace, my spatial awareness non-existent. I was debating whether to rewatch all of Naruto or to simply start at Shippuden, a very important decision, as I'm sure you'd understand. Beep. Jolted back into reality, I snapped my head towards the noise. Racing at speeds many miles past the limit was a white semi-truck. Although it was a narrow street, I could have maybe have jumped out of the way. But all I could think of was, God fucking damn it. Instead I froze. I just stood there like a deer in the headlights, trapped in a paralyzed state of fear, unable to move a muscle. My mind was repeating the same mantra like a broken record: oh my god, fuck, shit, damn it, fuck my life. Next thing I knew, the 2-ton truck slammed into me and all I could feel was pain, so much pain. It was everywhere, bones breaking, blood boiling, skin burning, organs rupturing, lungs drowning. Being set on fire would have been a walk in the park compared to this. Just when I thought the pain could not get any worse, a white-hot burning sensation crawled across my neck. My thoughts were cut off as my consciousness couldn't process the overwhelming intake of signals erupting from my neck. And just like that, the pain was over. Finding out that you're a transparent, shapeless mass floating 10 feet in the air staring at the scene of your death is certainly a jarring experience. The truck driver had slammed down on his brakes, bringing the truck to a shuddering halt. He threw open his door and rushed towards where my body lay, which brought my attention to the gruesome scene before me. I had been reduced to roadkill, headless roadkill. To say that there was blood was an understatement. My body was literally swimming in its own pool of it. The front of the truck was covered in the stuff as well. I felt for the poor person who had to clean it off. Then there was the matter of my head, or lack of thereof. I took a closer look at what used to be my head. Well, damn. I thought, who's going to wash the dishes now? I'd like to say that I was perfectly normal and my thought processes were only shot due to the fact that I was in shock. I'd like to say that, really, but if I'm going to be honest, then I guess you could say I am a little special. Okay, now on to my next dilemma. Why the hell am I still here? I was 100% sure that it is absolutely impossible to survive without a head, and at that moment I spied with my little eye one decapitated body with its former head definitely not attached to said body. Where is the white light? The tunnel? I don't know, Grim Reaper. I'm used. There are so many different possibilities as to what could occur after death: heaven, hell, limbo, reincarnation, rebirth, or even nothing at all, just ceasing to exist entirely. I could easily accept all of those options, even the latter, but remaining on Earth as a disembodied spirit would just be depressing and lonely. I refuse to be some kind of lingering ghost, you hear me? I scowled. I had no clue why I tried to speak nor who I had tried speaking to. As the words left my mouth, which was rather odd, given the fact that I no longer had a mouth, I felt a strange tingling sensation wash over me. For the second time today I found myself paralyzed, though not by fear this time. It felt as though a supernatural force was holding me rigidly in place. The surreal sensation which had now permeated my entire body had abruptly intensified to a point where it was beyond extraordinarily painful. Unable to focus upon anything other than the absolute pain invading my senses, I was only dimly aware as the world around me disappeared in a vicious swirl of color. Waking up from a nightmare was always an arduous ordeal, heart pounding, breathing heavy, sweat dripping, clothes confining. That harrowing feeling of being unable to discern the difference between fantasy and reality. It led to the irresistible urge to search for familiar surroundings to reacquaint and reorganize myself. My eyes fluttered open and I sat up on a soft bed. Impossibly bright light flooded my senses and I reflexively flinched away from it. There was a distant ringing in my ears and my mind was vaguely fuzzy. For several moments I remained stationary, attempting to adjust. When the light wasn't as piercing through my closed lids, and my mind clearer, I decided to open my eyes. After taking in my surroundings, I slapped myself hard on my right cheek, then again on my left cheek. The slaps left my face stinging like I face planted into a pile of needles. But this has to be a nightmare, right? Because in no way, shape or form was I in my bedroom. Gone were my familiar cool gray walls covered with pictures and posters, in their place was an eggshell white wall with little drawings of cherry blossoms. My once blue bed carpet had been taken over by a shameless baby soft pink. All of my furniture was interchanged with adorable, cutesy, entirely too feminine objects and colors. My heart hammered inside of my chest and my hands flew up in a vain attempt to suppress my startled shriek. The movement caused a few loose bangs to cover my eyes. A pause. Why is my hair pink? Slowly, with great care and reluctance, I pulled my hair forward, which was somehow a foot longer, and no longer curly, and examined it. This is not my hair, I realized. What the hell? Confused, frightened, and frustrated, I threw off the covers from my bed and stormed across the room. My hands itched to hold my Kisame and Kakashi plus highs, as I normally did when I felt anxious, but they were nowhere to be found. When I reached the end of the room I grabbed an elegant mirror that stood on a wooden white desk. I gaped upon seeing my reflection. Pink hair, green eyes, pale skin, long hair. Holy sweet berry loving Mew. I'm Sakura. I stared at me in utter dumbfoundment. So, I thought slowly, I somehow died and reincarnated into Sakura. Another pause. Ah, man. I wanted to be Hinata. Chapter 2, Hugs are awesome. Disbelief left me stupefied for several moments as I stared at my reflection. In what possible way did any of what was happening make any kind of sense? Where was the logic? The reasoning? The explanation? How? Why? No laws of science, physics, not even quantum, or common sense could provide an answer. One moment I was most certainly dead, and the next I had awoken perfectly coherent and fine in another person's body. In a fictional person's body. Mind blown. Tentatively, I reached up a hand and squeezed my cheek. I instinctively winced at the immediate pain I felt. Those slaps from before left my cheeks a little too tender. My bright green eyes narrowed and I made various erratic movements, being sure that the reflection accurately followed my movements. Several minutes later, and I had confirmed, again, that I truly was in Sakura's body, and that I was in at least some kind of reality. Given my history I still felt disinclined to believe what was transpiring, but the longer I stayed in her room, feeling, hearing, smelling everything with such clarity and vividness, it became harder to argue that I was dreaming. I licked my dry lips. Okay. It was time to reassess. I was in another world, a world that I always wished to be a part of, in another person's body. I needed specifics now. Judging from the length of our hair I was semi-confident to declare that I was before the Chunin exams. An onslaught of dizziness descended upon me and a surge of information rushed through my mind. Flashes of images, and vague knowledge bombarded me, forcing me to bend over and clutch at my head. As quickly as it had come, it had vanished and I was left bewildered with the mild impression of where the academy was. So, what was that? Her memories? Come to think of it, I can't remember anything from her own life. I only have my own memories from past life. But now I know where the academy is. Is that how it will be? Will her memories merge with my own? If that's the case, then, where was the real Sakura? Reflexively, I glanced around the room. If I was in her body, was she then in my old body? Or was she still inside of me? Us? I was starting to get disoriented trying to figure all of that out. Obviously I wouldn't be obtaining any answers in the foreseeable future, and rethinking the same questions over and over again would do me absolutely no good. Besides, I knew it was around that time that I should be heading to the academy. It's about time you figured that out. I gave a startled shout, my hands flying up to cover my mouth as I whirled around the room. My eyes scanned for any possible intruder, or explanation for the voice that I heard with perfect clarity. Relax, moron. I'm your inner self. Oh, I mumbled aloud. Why the hell do I have an inner self? I don't have a contradicting personality. I fully embrace my pervy and crude nature. Ever think that Sakura's inner self was stemmed from genetics and not purely psychological? You're in her body, stands to reason you'd have an inner self, too. Besides, are you really that surprised to have a voice in your head, given your past life? So you're my inner self, right? Not Sakura's. As far as I know. I know as much as you at this point. Okay. Weird, but okay. So now what do we do? Good question. I could either A. Mimic the storyline perfectly and act like a violent tsundere who is obsessed with someone who is completely boring, B. Make minor changes enough to tolerate living as Sakura, or C. Fuck the storyline as much as I want to please me. I think the choice is obvious. Fuck up the storyline for personal pleasure. We died rather pitifully because of your stupidity, so let's be sure to go out with a bang, yes? It may not have been the greatest death, but it wasn't like I planned on getting hit. Well, now you can start planning for a better death. This is true. I'm thinking something with lots of explosions. Acceptable. I nodded to my inner self, content with our agreement and tentative plans. Obviously I wouldn't march straight into the Hokage's office and blurt everything out, way too boring. Instead, I would live out the easy life of Sakura, do whatever the hell I wanted to, and enjoy the ever-living shit out of my random second life. Let's get this party started. It took longer than I would care to admit to find any piece of clothing that wasn't the standard Sakura dress. The girl owned 25 dresses. I liked dresses well enough, the feeling of the wind rushing in between the legs was just flat out nice, but let's be honest, hella impractical for what was coming up. I would have to set aside some time to shop for another outfit. Hooray for finding a cute little piggy bank with an abysmal amount of money inside that I somehow had a conversion rate inside my head. I was able to find a dark red training skirt, a long-sleeved white shirt, and a pink vest with the Haruno crest. A little too feminine for my personal taste, but until I went shopping it would have to do. Certainly better than the tight-fitting, flimsy dress Sakura seemed to love oh so much. The hair was another thing that would have to be adjusted, but I had something in store for that. Finished with my task of getting ready, I headed downstairs. It was a very modest home, with mostly pictures of family covering the walls inch to inch and the occasional potted flower. What I saw in the house seemed to match up with the random bits of memory I had floating in my head. To my surprise, no one else was at home. Which was odd, because I could have sworn in canon that Sakura's mother was always home, and she most certainly was home the day Sakura left to get her team assignments. Confused, I wandered into the kitchen and noticed a bright yellow note stuck onto a tidy fridge. Dear Sakura, your mother and I won a vacation from the lottery last night. We won't be back for a while, but I'm sure you'll be busy with your new team. We want you to know that we love you so much, and we're sorry we couldn't take you with us. Please be sure to eat healthy, don't act too reckless, and don't stay out too late. Your father wants to remind you that you cannot have any boys over, either. We love you. Always, and always. Ka-chan and To-san. My lips curled upwards as I reread the letter. They had both signed it, Mother, Ka-chan, had even put little hearts around her name. Damn, Sakura had some adorable parents. Shame they weren't there, but at least they seemed like they would get to enjoy themselves. Maybe it was a stroke of luck they weren't there, since I didn't really have any memories of them. I wasn't sure how I was supposed to act. I folded up the note before tossing it out, then grabbed an apple to eat, like an asshole, praised to Cinemasons, and headed to the academy. As I meandered down the dirt path I tried to reorganize the buzzing memories I had. It was uncomfortable to think about them because I could distinctly feel that they weren't mine. They were dull, fuzzy, and obnoxiously loud all at once. I knew they were important, so I tried to soak them in and understand them. It would seem odd if the genius Sakura suddenly didn't know some random historical fact that was absolutely as important as a pig's fart in Timbuktu. Pale blonde hair caught my attention and pulled me out of those thoughts. Ah, I thought, so I am at the start of episode 3. And here came the first muck-up in Sakura's life. Now, Ino wasn't my favorite kunoichi, hail the beauty that is Konan, but to be frank, I always thought it was stupid how they destroyed a perfectly good friendship over a boy before they even hit puberty. Worse, over Sasuke. Then they even went so far as to start throwing themselves at him with no dignity or self-worth. I may not have been a hardcore feminist, or really put much stock into genders period, but seeing little girls do that was just, ew. There was just no way I could do that as Sakura. Nope. Not for Sasuke. Madara or Kisame, I could understand. But Sasuke? Hell nah. So, really, having that rivalry continue on was absolutely pointless. Ino. I called out, a bright smile blooming on my face as I hurried over to her. Ino stopped where she was and turned around to glare at me, hands on hips, even. I want to talk to you, I explained, my smile not budging an inch despite her cute, ferocious glare. Like a fluffy little duckling yelling fear me. So talk, she snapped back, her pale eyes narrowing. We're kunoichi now, I began, ignoring Ino's distasteful snort, and I don't want us to fight anymore. That threw the little duckling for a loop. Her glower faded for a moment, to be replaced by a confused look, before returning full force. What are you talking about, billboard brow? I give up on Sasuke. She blanched. What? I give up on Sasuke. You can have him. She looked positively scandalized, as if I had just told her the greatest taboo ever known to man had been committed by a cute little kitten. You're joking, right? What, did you hit your giant forehead on something this morning? I have a big head because I have a big brain, I retorted childishly, resisting the urge to stick out my tongue. I realized this whole thing is so stupid. She was in disbelief. What are you talking about? We're going to be kunoichis. Our lives are going to be on the line, Ino. I don't want anything to happen to you, and I especially don't want our last words to each other be angry ones. We were friends once, Ino, best friends, and we gave up that awesome friendship for some guy. I'm saying it's not worth it now. I want us to be friends again, and if giving up Sasuke is what it takes for that to happen, then so be it. He's all yours. Which is true. I really don't want anything to happen to the rookie 9. Except maybe Sasuke. And how do I know this isn't some kind of trick? You don't, I admitted, but it doesn't change the fact that the offer still stands. If you want it to, that is. A perplexed look settled on her face. Ino chewed on her bottom lip, her hands anxiously combing through her ponytail. A full 3 minutes of silence ticked by before she hesitantly said, "Okay, bye Sakura. I accept your defeat, and I also want us to be friends again." I grinned. Thanks. Ino. Can I hug you? Ino smiled slowly. Sure be Sakura. We hugged. I tried my best to contain the inner fangirl squeal of triumphant for hugging my very first character from Naruto. Though, I guess they weren't characters anymore. Still. That was too cool. Even though I would have much preferred being in Hinata's body. She's just so cute. And wow, I sound really disturbing? Pedophilic? Creepy? Obsessive fangirlish? Because you are all those things and more. Thanks, bitch. Just doing my job. Ino and I pulled apart. So you ready to head off to the academy? Ino grinned. Yeah. I hope I'm going to be on Sasuke-kun's team. I laughed. I hope Kakashi is going to be my sensei. As we walked, she shot me a curious look. Kakashi. A super awesome shinobi who used to be an Umbu captain, I explained. He's super cool. Oh. And he has a really nice butt. Sounds like my kind of teacher. We entered the classroom, both of us grinning. I scanned the classroom and found Naruto sitting next to Sasuke. Then, I found Hinata sitting by some random guy. I frowned upon realizing my chances of sitting next to her were dashed. Damn it. A quick peek at Ino confirmed she was upset by the fact that Naruto was sitting next to her precious Sasuke. Her pouting was pretty darn cute and I had to resist the urge to pinch her cheeks and go ah. Thankfully, I was distracted by the greatest ball of sunshine and love looking over at me. Immediately, I perked up and grinned at the boy one day to become hero. "Good morning, Naruto." Naruto's face turned beet red and he practically spasmed out of his seat to hurry over to me. "Gee, good morning, Sakura-chan. Holy shit, he is so adorable. He really does have those whiskers. Aw, I really wanna hug him now. Crazy bad. He's like an adorable brat that just needs to be hugged. How in the hell could Sakura have resisted hugging this cutie patootie? Not to mention, how could anyone resist hugging Hinata? Naruto." "Yes, Sakura-chan." Naruto eagerly inquired. "I'm going to hug you," I told him. What? He stammered, the tips of his ears turning red. I gestured at him. "You're adorable. I must hug adorable things, ergo I must hug you. Ino, I'm hugging you next." Ino giggled. "You're in a good mood today, Sakura. I'll be in an even better mood if I get to hug everyone I want. Ready, Naruto?" "Why yeah," he squeaked, a deliriously happy smile on his face. I cheerfully leapt at the main character and threw my arms around his neck, hugging him tightly. He squeezed me back, giggling. "Hell. Yes. I just got hugged by the Naruto. Suck it, fangirls. Meow-ha-ha-ha. Oh. Nice touch," with the evil laugh. "Thanks. I was quite proud of it myself." I pulled back and ruffled his hair affectionately. In the next heartbeat I turned over to my other favorite blondie. Ino. Ino's grin mirrored my own and she threw herself at me. I picked her up, twirling her around in my excitement, which made Ino giggle in delight. Upon setting her back on the ground I was filled with confidence, enough so that I marched straight over to Hinata. The heiress gave a hesitant smile upon seeing me at her desk. Unsurprisingly, she had watched the entire exchange. When wasn't she looking at Naruto? With an unwavering certainty and a bright smile I bluntly asked, "Hinata-chan, may I please hug you?" What? Hinata squeaked, her cheeks already turning rosy. "Please." Suppose so," Hinata responded hesitantly upon seeing my unbeatable puppy dog eyes. I did a victory dance in my head, which looked like the Bunkin dance, before excitedly flinging my arms around her neck and hugging her tightly. Hinata returned my enthusiastic hug with gentle tentativeness, and I was relieved that she didn't appear too uncomfortable when I pulled back. Suddenly, I had the vague thought that Iruka would be arriving any moment. Perhaps more of Sakura's memories were mixing in with my own, and that was the usual time Iruka would arrive. Thinking quickly, I glanced around the room before grabbing the nearest empty spot, coincidentally 2 seats away from Duck Ass. Naruto and Ino, likely taking the hint, hurried to grab their own seats, with Naruto sitting by Duck Ass, and Ino by Shikamaru in the back. As Naruto sat beside me, his face still a little red, he prompted, Sakura-chan? So that hug." I smiled at the hero. "Yeah. You really are the cutest thing ever, and I absolutely have to hug cute things. You're welcome to hug me, anytime." Naruto excitedly exclaimed. "Awesome. Hey, why did you choose to sit next to Duck Ass, I mean, Sasuke?" Vibrant blue eyes blinked at me in confusion. Naruto tilted his head to the left. "Sakura-chan, why aren't you calling him Kun, or whatever?" "Why would I?" I dismissed, waving my hand in contemptuous gesture. "There's nothing special about him. Truly, I was insane to have even liked him in the first place. There are far better, more people to admire than someone like him. I was a blind idiot to not have realized such sooner." Sakura-chan, you're not an idiot." "Not anymore," I agreed. "Besides, I have more important things to focus on." "Like what?" Naruto asked curiously. Before I could answer, Iruka entered the classroom. "Good morning, students." He greeted cheerily, making his way to the front of the room. He then began his impossibly boring speech, on which I completely, shamelessly tuned out on. Instead, I reflected on one of my many goals. Such as creating my own personal harem, having Kisame acknowledge me as his #1 fangirl, squeezing Kakashi's ass, giving flowers to Konan, keeping the Akatsuki alive, and of course, ruining Kabuto's life. Why only Kabuto's? I understand where everyone else is coming from, I thought. Orochimaru is even pretty cool in a mad scientist way, but Kabuto? Nothing, but a tool who can't think for himself. He's worse than Sasuke during the Kage Summit. Worse than Sakura pre-timeskip, even. The guy ruined some of my favorite characters' lives and he didn't even have the balls to be upfront about it. At least Obito has the sexy voice going on for him and I hardcore ship him with Mia. Kabuto has nothing going for him. Don't you feel even a little sympathetic for his backstory? Nope. I feel like he's just the person you love to hate. Yeah, he's just a hateable guy. I can see that. I would hope so. You're me. Something like that. With that conversation concluded, I went on to continue my daily fantasizes of making all the awesome people in the show part of my harem before I was rudely interrupted by Naruto's shout of happiness. Yes. I was about to frown and wonder what that was about, but then I remembered that Iruka was giving out team assignments, so he had likely reached the point on the list where he told Naruto he was going to be on the same team as me. I laughed. Naruto's happiness was utterly infectious. How could anyone hate him? Looks like we're in the same group, Naruto. Naruto giggled, giving me a sheepish grin with a charming blush. And Uchiha Sasuke? Ah, damn it, Naruto grumbled. Sasuke spared us a sidelong glance before his gaze returned back to the front classroom. Heaven forbid the great Sasuke deigned us with a proper look. Iruka listed off the rest of the teams, and the moment he finished, Naruto decided to voice his disagreement. Iruka-sensei, why is a top student, like me, paired off in the same group with this guy? He shouted, his finger jutting out and jabbing at Sasuke, as if that would somehow help make his argument valid. Iruka gave him a calculating look before he explained, we want our teams to be balanced, Naruto. The best shinobi and kunoichi in the class are paired with the dead last of the class, which is you. Naruto grimaced. Don't get in my way, idiot, Sasuke drawled from his seat, not even bothering to look over at Naruto. Naruto snarled, bastard, what did you just call me? I shook my head as Naruto huffed and puffed at Sasuke, but simply could not blow him down. Iruka finished his brief lecture before dismissing us for a short break before we had to meet back to greet our new instructors. Knowing exactly what I had to do before meeting Kakashi, I bolted out of the classroom with a skip in my step. Naruto wasn't far behind me, apparently, because as soon as my feet landed on the pavement outside he called out, Sakura-chan. I halted and turned around. Sup? We should go eat together now. We're in the same group, after all, Naruto said, his eyes brimming with warmth. Sorry, Naruto, I sincerely apologized, but I need to head to the library ASAP and a few other places before we meet our instructor. We can eat later, though. Naruto's eyes widened and he shouted, really? I giggled. Yes, but not as a date. As two friends who are going to become best friends. The poor boy looked so torn. On one hand I was so going to pop his best friend cherry, but on the other hand he so wanted me to pop his other cherry. Or maybe not. Maybe Naruto wasn't a pervert like me and honestly couldn't tell the difference between a crush and friendship at that point. He settled on an enthusiastic nod and I headed off. My arms ached as I placed down the large stack of books on a stone bench near the academy. I let out a soft, relieved sigh to no longer have to carry them around. As soon as class had ended I made a beeline for the nearest library to check them out. I knew I would have to purchase a backpack ASAP because there was simply no way I could carry them around in my arms for the rest of the day. Thankfully, I could see a shinobi shop roughly a block away from the academy, so I could take care of that before our break was over. I'm going to have to get used to lugging all these around, I thought ruefully. The librarian was already used to seeing Sakura around and had absolutely no reserves about allowing me to check out so many books, well past the limit allowed to academy students, or genin. If you want to be able to finish the medical training pre-canon timeline, then yes. If I'm able to get a head start on medical training, who the hell wouldn't want medical training? Guaranteed fallback if the kunoichi career doesn't pan out, and the potential to pull off the sexy doctor/nurse, then I might be able to focus on other things later on. Maybe even become someone's apprentice. Like who? Kisame-sama, Of course. You'd have to become a missing nin, and that would definitely fuck up the plotline to a completely unguessable point. A girl can dream, can't she? Why would you want that? I am Kisame-sama's #1 fangirl, of course. Why wouldn't I want to be his apprentice? He's cool, funny, and perfection personified. What? No one can hold a candle to the great Kisame-sama. Stop. Stop right now. I meant skill-wise, why would you to be his apprentice? Learning to use a sword would be sweet, I confessed. Gymnastics and jujitsu don't really deal with weapons. Great for flexibility, and venting frustrations, but neither are badass. Beware. I can pin you down. How lame. Whereas with a sword, beware, I can and will cut off your hands. Total badassery right there. Alright, alright. You should go get your damn backpack already and start reading. Ah, right. I totally forgot. I know. Chapter 3, Pinch, Pinch. Housework can't kill you, but why take a chance? Phyllis. Thank you for noticing me, Kantrona-senpai. Disclaimer, Naruto is Kishimoto's toy. I'm just playing with it. Abridged isn't mine either. Edit, March 15, 17, the combo of Shy Sky and Dark Petal 16 come to save the day of horrible grammatical errors. Typos beware. Edit 4/17. He's late, Naruto grumbled petulantly. The boy peered sullenly at front door of the classroom. His words made me glance up briefly from one of my texts. I had planned for Kakashi's lateness perfectly and brought an abundance of medical textbooks. I was still sorting through Sakura's memories, and thank God I started getting her memories on perfect chakra control, and I found that it was largely used like a muscle memory, not a lot of thought process on my own part, so I didn't understand a lot of the jargon used in the texts. As a result, I had to lug around even more books than otherwise necessary to look up a certain word, phrase, or reference. I couldn't quite carry all of those books on my own, so I had to purchase a sturdy black backpack. Why Sakura did not own one was beyond me. Because I was perfectly entertained and knew in advance that the man would be late, I wasn't bothered in the slightest bit like Naruto, or even broody Sasuke. Yep, I agreed. In response, Naruto grabbed an eraser and began setting up his prank. I quirked an eyebrow at him. It's your own fault if you get in trouble. HN. A Jonin isn't going to fall for something as stupid as that, Sasuke declared quietly. You'd be amazed, I said sagely, nodding my head in mock wisdom. With timing that only existed in that universe, as I said that, Kakashi entered the room and the eraser landed on his head with a plop. Naruto burst out into laughter, while I giggled in glee at finally seeing Kakashi in person, and Sasuke stared at him in annoyance. Kakashi slowly picked up the eraser and looked it over before saying, how should I say this? My first impression of you all, you're idiots. I pouted. Don't lump me in with duck ass. I folded my hands neatly into my lap, taking the moment in to admire the beauty that was Kakashi Hatake. He was every bit as delicious to look at as he was in the anime/manga, and now that I knew what laid underneath that mask, well, I had a very active imagination. A perverted giggle escaped my lips and Kakashi gave me a mildly concerned look. I will squeeze that ass when you least expect it, Kakashi-sensei, I thought passionately. Jiraiya has nothing on my level of perviness. A warm breeze passed through us on the roof of the academy. The leaves rustled behind us, creating a very relaxing atmosphere. A comfortable, for me, at least, silence settled between the four of us until Kakashi was the first to break it. First off, let me have you guys introduce yourselves. What would you have us say? Naruto asked, frowning. Sunshine personified had eagerly sat next to me on my right, his shoulder bumping against my own. Ah, things like your likes, dislikes, dreams, and hobbies, or something like that. Naruto's brow furrowed and he started rocking back and forth. Then why don't you start with yourself, sensei? Kakashi lazily pointed towards himself, putting on an air of mild surprise. Me? Well, my name is Hatake Kakashi. I don't feel like telling you guys about my likes and dislikes. I've never really thought about my future, or dream. As for my hobbies, I have many. Have you considered modeling? I asked seriously. Kakashi scratched the back of his head. You know, you're not the first one to ask me about that. I'm not surprised, I responded honestly, then smiled mischievously. I bet you have a cute little beauty mark under that mask of yours. I can practically see it now. Kakashi chuckled, although I thought it might have been a bit of a forced chuckle. Anyway, it's your guys' turn now. Why don't? Me. Naruto exclaimed happily. I'm Uzumaki Naruto. I like cup ramen, but I like ramen at Ichiraku that Iruka-sensei buys for me even more. I hate the 3 minutes I have to wait to boil up the ramen. My hobby is to eat and compare ramen, and my dream is to become greater than all of the Hokages. I'm going to make all the villagers recognize my existence. Kakashi nodded his head, unsurprised by Naruto's introduction. Alright, little miss is next. I giggled. You can call me Sakura, sensei. Sakura, then, Kakashi corrected, awarding me with his trademark eye smile. I almost swooned before I reminded myself that Kisame was officially real in that world and I was his fangirl first. Since we're going before Sasuke, you thinking what I'm thinking? Absolutely. We are so trolling him. My likes are reading, and I suppose now training, I began slowly, trying to keep a gleeful smirk off my face. I dislike unoriginal posers. My hobby is to admire the beauty that has been placed in this world, as well as to study to become a medical kunoichi. Also, I have one goal that I have no intention to leave as a mere dream, to completely ruin a certain man. Kakashi remained silent for several moments, likely surprised by my introduction. I did my best to school my features into an utterly serious face, but it was a struggle. Naruto seemed genuinely caught off guard by what I had said, and I didn't even care to look over at Sasuke. Kakashi clapped his hands. Alright. Next up is you, Broody. Sasuke spoke without hesitation. My name is Uchiha Sasuke. There are many things I hate and not a lot I like. Also, I have an ambition that I have no intention to leave as a dream. The revival of my clan and to kill a certain man. Hey, that sounds like what I just said, I exclaimed, feigning shock. Way to be original, Sasuke, Naruto mocked. Sasuke ignored us. Silly duck ass. Whatever. Trolling Sasuke was a success, I'm happy. Alright, Kakashi began, the three of you are very distinctive and interesting. We'll have a mission tomorrow. First we'll do what only the four of us can do. A very inappropriate image crossed my mind and I giggled. What is it? Naruto asked eagerly, leaning forward and practically vibrating with excitement. Survival training. Survival training. I smirked. Oh. Out of 27 graduates, only 9 pass and become genin. 18 will be sent back to the academy. So, in turn roughly 66% dropout, Kakashi explained, doing his best to appear very intimidating and ominous. Of course that didn't work on me. I still remembered seeing the man turn 50 Shades of Red reading Ichai out loud to help decipher Jiraya's message. Not to mention I knew for a fact that the man treated his summons like family, each had their own bowl, and he regularly groomed them. It was hard to find a man like Kakashi intimidating with all that knowledge, and so much more. Still, I had to keep in mind that I was a fresh academy student and I should have been. Ah, fuck it. I'm so going to pinch those cheeks, I cooed. What? Kakashi asked, completely off guard. Did I say that out loud? Pretend you heard nothing, I insisted, then started to whistle innocently. The ex-Umbu captain distinctly scooted away from a little girl with pink hair. That only heightened my amusement, of course. It was hard to focus on what else Kakashi talked about because all I could think about was how shy and adorable the supposed badass was when it came to anything perverse. Before I knew it, Kakashi was gone, Sasuke left in an awful big hurry, and Naruto was nervously looking over at me. I gave a woeful sigh before casting a glance over at my future teammate. Wanna go get that ramen now? Naruto's nervousness faded away and he bounced up and down. Yeah. I'll pay for whatever you want, Sakura-chan. Drop the chan, you adorable boy, I teased. We're friends now, so let's be on a first-name basis. If you pay for our food this time, I'll pay for next time. Next time. Naruto squeaked, his face illuminating with sheer happiness. Yep. So lead the way. Yada. Lunch with Naruto went about as one would expect it to go. The ball of radiance was beyond happy and merrily chattered away about various and unimportant things. It felt relaxing and nice, and I was already comfortable around his presence. I was dead set on becoming Naruto's first best friend because clearly Sasuke did not deserve that right. After I bid my companion farewell, I lugged my backpack across the village to my next destination. I took the back way instead of the main street, wanting to experience the village through my own eyes instead of Sakura's memories. There were moments where two different memories collided, such as there was a dessert shop at a corner, that used to be pawn shop, and Sakura had memories of both of them in that area, and it was hard to tell which one was the more recent one until I actually had to go there in person to see for myself. The actual journey took well over an hour and my shoulders ached something fierce from lugging the heavy backpack around. It was with great relief that I approached the Yamanaka's compound. With Sakura's memories as my guide, I deftly maneuvered through the bustling area until I reached Ino's front door. I knocked politely on the door and a solid minute passed by before Ino opened the door. I grinned at her. "Hey, pretty lady." Ino's grin lit up her face. "Hey. Did your team's sensei finally show up?" "Yeah," I answered, thinking back to my wonderful first meeting with the man who had the world's greatest ass. I even got Kakashi as my sensei, the one with the perfect butt. Ino squealed. "That's amazing. I'm so jealous. Our sensei, Asuma, seems so lazy. I'm afraid he'll be as bad as Shikamaru." "You never know," I responded, giving her a sympathetic pat. "Do you think you could do me a favor, though?" "What do you need?" Ino asked. "Can you cut my hair? My parents are gone on vacation and you know how Ka-chan always cut my hair before." Ino gasped, her hands flying up to her mouth in disbelief. Are you serious? Everyone knows Sasuke-kun only likes girls with long hair." "I was serious about letting you have him," I told her. "I'm done with him. There are better fish in the sea for me." "Wow," Ino uttered, speechless for almost an entire minute before she recovered, looking positively beside herself with smug glee. "I'm really glad to hear you say that. Come on inside, then, and let me work my magic." I gave her a mock bow. "Thank you, lady. While you're here, you should join us for dinner. I'm sure Ka-chan will be happy to see you again." "I will never say no to free food," I told her, perfectly serious. When morning came the following day, I woke up a bit earlier than I normally would have in order to finish reading a text I had started last night. I was nearly finished with my first read-through of the first textbook. I would go back to it when I had finished it and create notes in a separate thick scroll I had bought. Why would I ever use notebooks again when I could use scrolls? Only after I had finished with my, surprisingly, meticulous notes would I return the first book I had checked out. I planned on repeating the process for every how-to medical textbook I could get my hands on. Once I had enough knowledge of the basics, I felt confident enough that I could totally try it out on my own. Screw trying it on fish, or whatever. I had my own personal Uzumaki with a Kyuubi regenerative to boot. Best of all, I could bribe him with food. Completely fair trade. I finished the reading around 6 and started getting ready for the day. With much glee I slipped on the outfit I had bought yesterday. It wasn't extravagant by any means, it was simple just like me. Teehee. I bought black baggy pants that were thick enough not to tear from the trials I would inevitably put them through as a kunoichi. The pockets were deep enough that I could stuff a few mini scrolls in each of them. Sadly, I did not have enough money to buy storage scrolls, yet, and the owner was kind enough to provide the fabric and threads required to mend the pants. Not that I knew how to stitch, yet, or anything. Since I want medical training, though, that would have to be remedied pretty quick. Probably. I'll definitely get around to it. Next was a long durable red hoodie. The hoodie's length went down to a little above my knees, but the sleeve length and torso fit me perfectly. With the hoodie I bought some alternating red and white tank tops to wear underneath in case I got too hot during a training session. Supposedly kunoichi and shinobi could use their chakra to regulate their body heat, but that was a skill out of my reach for the time being. I, also, simply could not resist getting some badass-looking black gloves with a metal back, and a matching pair of standard badass-looking shinobi black boots. All I needed was some sunglasses to put on any time I wanted to make a pun, and I was golden. Time to head out, then, I thought to myself. I heft my ridiculously heavy backpack over my shoulders, way too heavy to carry that shit on one shoulder, and headed out the front door. I paused. Where in the name of Madara's sexiness are the training grounds? Half an hour later I found the training grounds. I had to stop and ask for directions repeatedly, but I did find my way, so that was a win for me. Apparently Sakura had no memories of ever going to a training ground. Explains a lot. With an air of I did not get lost trying to find this place, I confidently marched up to my teammates, dropped the offensively heavy backpack onto the ground with a loud and very distinct thud, and then fell back on my ass. Sweet freedom for my poor shoulders, I thought, savoring the moment before I pulled out the first medical book I read, along with a thick medium-sized scroll, various pens, and a folded-up lap tray. I felt the eyes of my teammates on me, but for the moment I ignored them as I unfolded the tray, set it up in my lap, unrolled a portion of the scroll and flipped to the second chapter of the book. I had barely begun writing out my first sentence when Naruto dropped beside me and not so subtly tried to discern what I was reading/writing. "What happened to your hair?" Naruto bluntly asked. I looked up and awarded my friend with a wink. "Like it? I call it, the practical." Naruto beamed at me. "You look cute no matter what, Sakura-chan." "Ah, I could. You're a big ball of sweetness, aren't you?" Naruto's smile turned a bit more sheepish and I reached over and patted his cheek. "Somehow, someway, I'm going to adopt you." His brow furrowed and he tilted his head. "What do you mean?" "Sheesh. Don't think about it right now." I patted the top of his head, which seemed to make him pretty dang happy, and then I turned right on back to my studies. Naruto was content for all of 10 minutes before he broke the silence again. "What do you have there, Sakura Cher Sakura?" "Medical texts," I explained, pulling another one out and handing it over for him to look at. "I'm training to become a medical kunoichi. It's the first step into achieving my end of goal of properly ruining a certain piece of shit's life." "Are you serious about that?" Sasuke asked, barely glancing over at me. "Completely," I confirmed, nodding my head. "The scumbag hurt my precious people. Sometimes you just have to take revenge. Technically he hasn't done anything. And he never will if I have anything to say about it. So it's not really revenge since the act hasn't been performed. He's still a piece of shit and deserves what's coming to him. He may not have violated the Akatsuki, yet, but he is a traitor to Konoha and is a leading factor in Sarutobi's death. That alone would warrant any Konoha shinobi's desire for revenge." "This is true." Naruto gasped, peering at one of the chapters. "You can understand all of this stuff. You must be a genius, Sakura." Sakura, apparently, had an eidetic memory. I now had an eidetic memory by consequence. I've decided to stop questioning things. Smiling, I shook my head. "Not right away. That's why I brought a dictionary with me. After a couple read-throughs, though, I'll understand it." "That's amazing." Naruto cheered. "You're going to be a great medical kunoichi, I promise." Repressing the urge to squeal, I settled on reaching over and patting his cheek again. "And you're going to be the greatest Hokage." My words seemed to have made his day because for the remainder of the time waiting for Kakashi, absolutely nothing could ruin his goofy grin. Warm light rested over us and I had to resist yawning. My eyes had grown tired after reading dry text for over 5 hours and taking notes, which was extremely weird. It seemed like I had a cross between my sloppy handwriting and Sakura's perfect style and I had to consciously think about which language to write in. I chose to keep everything in kanji because there was no reason to hide my note-taking, and I had a little doubt about being able to bullshit my way out of trouble if someone wondered how the hell a 12-year-old girl came up with a whole other language. Although now that I thought about it, I was sorely tempted to try it out. I wonder how far my bullshit would take me against Ibiki. Please don't try to find out. Not today, at least, I reassured my inner. Today. Good morning. Kakashi greeted us, I smile right in place. Good morning, I purred, giving him my best smoldering look. If he was even a little bit disturbed to have a supposed 12-year-old girl attempt to flirt with him, he didn't show it. Naruto folded his arms across his chest and yawned. You're late, sensei. Sorry, but a black cat crossed my path, so I had to take the long way, Kakashi explained. I nodded my head. That sounds perfectly reasonable. Did you accidentally break any mirrors on your way? Actually I almost did, Kakashi said. It was so harrowing, I had to stop by the nearby pet shop to deal with it. Then I ran into another black cat there, and you simply would not believe. Naruto shouted, enough. No one cares. Give us the stupid test already so we can pass it and get some lunch. You can tell it to me later, in private, sensei, I shamelessly flirted, tossing in an extravagant wink to boot. Kakashi chuckled awkwardly and went over to a nearby training post and placed an alarm clock. All right. He then reached into his back pocket. I took the moment to admire his backside, once more affirming the belief that he had a fine ass, before producing the infamous duo bells. The young man turned back towards us and presented them to us. Today's assignment is to take these bells away from me by noon. Those who can't do it won't get lunch, and will be tied to those nearby posts where I will eat my lunch in front of him. A bit of an S. Kakashi turned back towards me, his eye smile a bit more forced now. Did I say that out loud? I wondered, knowing full and well I did. Pretend you didn't hear that. What's an S, Sakura? Naruto asked. It's when. Stop, Sasuke ordered. There is no need for that kind of talk. Just because puberty hasn't hit you upside the head, yet, doesn't mean you have to spoil it for the rest of us, I grumbled. You will never become a proper kunoichi with manners like that, the Uchiha heir said disdainfully. You'd be surprised, Kakashi muttered, likely thinking of a certain super pervert. Then he clapped his hands. That's neither here, nor there. Your time starts now, students. If you want to become genin you need to obtain a bell, or you will be sent back to the academy. Begin. How scary, I mocked, then turned on my heel and leapt off into the trees. I didn't bother hiding myself, picking the first tree and just sitting down on the highest branch. My legs swung out, and I prepared myself for what was going to be a spectacular show. I should have brought popcorn. That might have been pushing it, considering your plan. Heh. True to his canon counterpart, Naruto stood alone in the center of the clearing, his arms crossed over his chest and a determined gleam in his eyes. Yosh. Let's face off fair and square. Kakashi visibly winced, a deadpan expression settling over his face. Are you a bit off-kilter? What's off-kilter is your hairstyle. Naruto brilliantly countered. I think his hair is quite nice. I would concur. Naruto let out a battle cry that was reminiscent to a toddler screaming, such a cutie patootie, as he charged to one of the world's greatest S-ranked shinobi. During the charge, Kakashi casually reached into his back pocket. Naruto caught the movement and stopped short of engaging with Kakashi, a wary look on his face. Kakashi didn't even look over at Naruto, his one visible eye locked on the famous memorial stone. I will teach you the key shinobi rules. Rule 1, Taijutsu. Kakashi finished pulling out his copy of Icha, flipping it open to where he last left off. Naruto was bewildered by the actions. What's wrong? Kakashi asked, not looking up from his porn. Why won't you come over and attack? Why are you reading at a time like this? Naruto asked, still befuddled. Why? It's because I was curious about what happens next. Don't worry, with you guys as my opponents it makes no difference if I'm reading or not. Naturally his words set off Naruto's quick temper and the Uzumaki charged at him without a care, or thought in the world. Naruto leapt high into the air, his right fist balled before he brought it down towards Kakashi's face. The Jonin lazily blocked it with one hand, so Naruto transitioned into a spinning kick. Kakashi ducked underneath it, and as Naruto fell back to the ground the ball of energy launched a punch forward with all his strength. Before the punch could even come close to connection, Kakashi had vanished only to reappear behind Naruto in a crouched position with fingers posed into the single most dangerous jutsu in all of existence. I began to shake with quiet laughter in anticipation for what was coming. Shinobi shouldn't let the enemy take them from behind multiple times, idiot. You're too late now. Konohagakure's ultimate taijutsu. Naruto let out a shriek, launching up into the air, and that's when I lost it. 1,000 years of pain. Sexual Asa assault. I howled, laughing with my entire body. Oh my Madara's sexiness, ahahaha, you actually did that, ahahaha. Kakashi turned towards me, as I clutched to the tree trunk and shook with laughter. It's not nice to laugh at your teammates. Ahahaha. CAH coming from you? Ahahaha. Now you're just giving away your position. Pfft. Like you wouldn't, ahahihi, already know, I giggled. Well, if you aren't going to hide, perhaps I should knock you out of the running. No. I have a mastermind plan. I shouted, trying desperately to stifle my giggles. If you do that, you'll never see how epic and brilliant I am. Then you better hide. Party pooper, I grumbled. You're lucky you're so dang hot. With a reluctant sigh, I hopped down from my tree and headed into the forest. I couldn't enact my sheer genius of a plan until certain events had transpired, so I was hoping I would be able to watch everyone screw up before I brought them into my plan that would 100% work. How does a genin hide from a jonin that specializes in assassination and tracking? They don't. But he wants us to hide, and I can't let a member of the fantastic ass club down. I'm sure he doesn't actually expect you to hide well. All the more reason to do so. In the distance I heard the distinct sound of kunai hitting hard against a log. I immediately shrieked, logged. Praise to Naruto abridged. You just gave away your position again. It had to be done. I regret nothing. I continued to maneuver through the forest, purposely going in circles in a vain attempt to mix up my scent, or whatever. After thoroughly circling the area, I finally crawled into a bush that was thick enough that my bright colors wouldn't be spotted easily. Laying on the ground like this is boring as hell. I know, right? Stupid Kakashi. Hello, Sakura. I poked my head out from under the bush, looking up at Kakashi who crouched in front of it. I beamed. Hello, sensei. How'd I do? Not bad for a maeter. You almost made me pause, Kakashi praised. I inwardly squealed, choosing instead to grin brightly. Thanks. I did try, you know. I'm sure. Are you ready for the third lesson? Genjutsu, right? Yes. Bring it on. Well, since you already know what's coming, I'll use a special one for you, Kakashi promised. I squealed. Really? I've never been placed under a genjutsu, so this is really exciting for me. You're a bit of an NS, I confirmed, nonplussed. Hey, if I break out of it in under a minute, will you buy me a cha-cha? Nope, Kakashi said, and then. Holy crap, ow. There was a total invasion of all of my senses. For someone who was only starting to get used to feeling chakra at all, having someone else's chakra shoved through you was not comfortable in the slightest bit. My entire body felt on fire. Shit. Getting my head decapitated felt like nothing in comparison to the burning lead that pumped through all of my veins. Then it was all gone and I was back in the forest, covered in sweat and minutely shaking. Was all Kakashi said, staring at me. Your file didn't mention you were chakra sensitive. That hurt, I whined, trembling. Probably, he agreed slowly. We stared at each other in silence, and then I thought I saw him move, but it was certainly too fast for my eyes to follow, and in the next moment I was out like a light. When I came to, my sweat had dried and the tremors were gone. Fuck, how long was I out for? Only a few minutes, I think. What the heck does chakra sensitive mean? We'll probably find out on our own through reading medical texts. Oh. I want to do that. To hell with asking people, let's find out on our own like badass detectives. Batman would totally approve of not asking for help. We wouldn't want to disappoint Batman. Exactly. Off to find my teammates now. I squatted down in front of Sasuke, enjoying the fact that the little ego monster, like you're one to talk, was buried up to his chin. He glowered at me. What do you want? I think a trade is in order, I drawled sweetly. Do you have an explosive tag? Yes, he responded reluctantly. I'll dig you out for that tag. Fine, Sasuke bit out. I did a slight cheer. Awesome. This will be the chance to try my first ever ninjutsu. I'm an expert on this, don't worry. No, don't I change my mind. Drawing from Sakura's memory, I gathered chakra into my fist. It felt awkward doing it myself, but at the same time completely natural. Following the instincts given to me by her, I slammed my fist into the ground in front of Sasuke, simultaneously releasing the chakra I had gathered. I was careful not to go overboard, not that I had a lot of chakra to begin with, sadly, but it was more than enough to crack and loosen the ground in front of the Avenger. Within seconds Sasuke had crawled out on his own, giving me a mildly worried look, worried more so for himself than me, obviously. Smiling brightly, I held out my right hand towards him. Gimme. Right, he said slowly. Is that all? Actually, I think we should work together, I went on. With Naruto, too. I have a really great plan in mind. Absolutely N. If you agree to this I will never ask you out on a date, and never be your fangirl, I purred, giving him a smile that Cheshire would highly approve of. The Uchiha hesitated. Promise. I swore easily. Come on, it's a great plan. I almost die in it. Why didn't you say so in the first place? He muttered dryly. It didn't take long to find Naruto, or convince him to work with us. Once we were all together, I cleared my throat. All you guys have to do is focus on grabbing the bells from Kakashi, I began to explain. Don't worry about little ol' me, I will be the main distraction. Of course one distraction, no matter how epic it is, isn't nearly enough for someone with that magnificent ass, so Naruto will be helping me, as well. Naruto was brimming with excitement. Oh, yeah? What do you want me to do? I need you to make about 30 clones, and turn them into sexy no jutsu, I started, but was stopped by Sasuke's look of utter disgust. Relax, woman. It morphed into sheer hatred for me at that point. Look, Kakashi-sensei is clearly uncomfortable with his students flirting with him. If Naruto turns into a naked girl and starts charging at him, he'll be at least a little distressed. Sasuke blinked at that. Wait, is that why you were flirting with him all this time? To see how he would react. A pause. Sure, let's go with that. Wow, you're really smart, Sakura, Naruto cheered. Anyway, so while I am the main distraction, on my signal which will be the word boom, by the way Naruto will start charging in with his clones, and Sasuke will hide amongst them. Kakashi is going to act very fast, and he is going to come straight towards me, so Sasuke you need to be prepared to grab the bells from him the second he gets near me. Simple enough, right? Right, Naruto agreed while Sasuke awarded us with a curt nod. Then it's settled, I declared. You two get ready and listen for the word boom. Sensei. I called, waving my hand up in the air over at Kakashi. I stepped into the clearing, completely relaxed, with a big smile on my face. Are you going to try now, Sakura? Kakashi asked, giving me his eye smile. I pulled out a piece of paper. This is an explosive tag Sasuke gave me. You better give me the bells, or else. Or else, what? Kakashi asked. I giggled and stuck it on my forehead, channeling enough chakra that my hand flowed a soft blue. Or else I go boom. All hell broke loose. The air was knocked right out of me and my world titled. In the next heartbeat I was on the ground with a positively livid Kakashi, over me. My right hand twitched and I reached up and around him, and pinched his right booty. He was off me in the next instant, channeling minor killing intent towards me, but hell I just pinched those butt cheeks so I was pretty dang happy. I looked over at Sasuke, who had his face covered by his hands. I asked, did you get them? Yes, he ground out. If I knew that was what you were going to do I would have never given you. You can have it back now, I told him, pulling out the explosive note and handing it to him. Kakashi was furious, releasing enough killing intent that Naruto and Sasuke started to wince. What were you thinking? It wasn't a real explosive tag, I said. I have an eidetic memory, so I drew a fake one last night. I just wanted you to think I had a real explosive tag, which is why I asked Sasuke, in case you were listening, so you would take me seriously. I think you broke my ribs, though. I rummaged my other pocket and pulled out the many other fake notes I had made and held them out to him. See? Perfectly harmless. I'm too perfect to get myself killed. Besides, now that I have seen that this world can create beauties such as yourself, why in the name of Madara's sexiness would I want to leave this place? I finished with a wink. Besides, pretty ingenious, huh? Told you guys it was an awesome plan. You have worrying definitions of awesome, Kakashi muttered, then turned to Sasuke. What are you going to do with the bells, Uchiha? Sasuke looked down at them, then reluctantly gave one to me. It was her plan. She at least earned a bell. If anything, she's dedicated. I threw the bell over to Naruto. Naruto can have my bell. And now we have all passed. What? Naruto asked, fumbling to catch the bell. This was a team exercise, I began, taking a moment to enjoy the spotlight. We won as a team, and so we pass as a team. The bells were only meant to divide us. How many two-man genin teams with fresh academy students do you see running around? And even if I'm wrong, I'll still choose to be the one tied up and failed. Sasuke and Naruto are my comrades and they take priority over everything else. After all. Pause for dramatic effect. Pause for dramatic effect. Pause for dramatic effect. Pause for the love of Madara's sexiness, pause. Those who don't take care of their friends are worse than scum, I finished. Do you disagree with my explanation, sensei? Kakashi was quiet for a moment before his smile returned. No. Congratulations, you all pass. Return here sharp 600. Oh, and Sakura, try to keep your hands off me. I make no promises, I said, preening under his praise. Then I guess I'll have to show you a new meaning to S, he said cheerfully. Oh boy. He's going to make tomorrow hell for us, isn't he? Maybe I shouldn't have provoked him so much. I briefly remembered the feeling of pinching the perfect ass, and discreetly wiped at my nose. Nah. Definitely worth extra. You probably should go to the hospital, though, Sakura, Kakashi went on. I might have broken a few ribs. Only if you carry me there. On second thought, why not come to training tomorrow the way you are now? Whatever you want, SENSEI. Kakashi looked up to the sky. This is karma, isn't it? The goggle gods have spoken. What? The goggle gods spoke to me while I was shopping last night, I whispered solemnly. I have to do their bidding or else I'll never learn about the rainbow stick story. Again, what? I don't know. I am only a humble disciple. Kakashi left at that point. Chapter 4, Keep your hands where I can see them. When I said that I cleaned my room, I meant that I made a path from the doorway to my bed. Anon. Disclaimer, Dark Petal 16, do not own Naruto. Warning, this story was made for shits and giggles. Edit, December 9th, 14. Edit, April 27th, 2017. Week 1. Day 1. Sensei. I greeted enthusiastically. I brought lunch for today. Would you like me to feed you? Kakashi stared at the overly cute bento box I held out to him before he rubbed at his nose, took a deep breath and sneezed out a small fireball. I let out a startled shout, dropping the smoldering box. Naruto gaped. That's sacrilege. You don't turn down a cute girl's homemade lunch. He had very good reason to, Sasuke muttered, tossing me wary looks. Mock sniffling, I whined, a simple no would have sufficed. Kakashi gave me an eye smile. Thank you for the lunch, Sakura. My heart soared under his praise. He set it on fire. Why the hell does that praise make you happy? Kakashi clapped his hands together. That reminds me, Sakura, did you go to the hospital? Yes, my ribs are merely bruised, I answered cheerfully. They said it would only hurt if I took deep, ragged breaths. I see. In that case, you all will be doing laps around Konoha until you drop. Academy reports can only tell me so much, I want to see exactly where you all are. My ribs instantly started crying. My poor heart was being torn in two. On one hand this was about to be hell, on the other hand I was clearly getting the Kakashi's attention. Being the optimist I was, though, I settled on the positive note that I was catching Kakashi's attention. In time, I was certain he would be so tired from my advances that he would give up and allow me all the butt pinches I wanted. There is something wrong with you. Naruto cried out, but that's so boring. Aren't you supposed to teach us something cool? Idiot, they don't teach fresh academy students the first week of becoming Genin high-level ninjutsu, Sasuke snapped. That's second week, minimum. Oh, okay. Kakashi only continued to smile at us. What are you waiting for? Chop chop. Day 2. Sensei. I cheered. I made everyone more bentos. Here you go. There was a blinding flash of light and in a single heartbeat the delicate bento box I had crafted for Kakashi was shattered into a pile of splinters and mush. My lip jutted out into a pout as I dropped the remainders onto the ground and wiped my hands on my shirt. I had decided to keep my hoodie off while I trained. Damn it, Kakashi-sensei, Naruto shouted. If you didn't want it, let one of us have it. That's free food. And Sakura-chan is a crazy good cook. Sasuke, who also had yet to take one of my bentos, he flat out declined and gave it to Naruto, and likely would not for a while, narrowed his eyes at Naruto's words. You're biased. There's no way we could trust your judgment in that. A frown tugged on my lips. I actually am an amazing cook. I had a combination of my own experience, and Sakura's memories. The girl cooked every day with her mother and for a while every weekend with her grandmother, which resulted in some bomb-ass food. Kakashi shrugged. Ma. How are your ribs, Sakura? Still bruised. My whole body is bruised now, actually. Superb. Let's do some upper body strength testing today. Go until we drop. Naruto sullenly asked. You know me so well. Day 3. Sensei. Here's your bento. The ground rumbled underneath my feet before a pillar shot up right in between my outstretched arms and knocked the lunch high up into the air. No, Naruto cried out in despair. She made pizza. You didn't know about pizza before today, is it really that good? Sasuke muttered, staring at the bento box he had given to Naruto. Naruto had taken a tentative bite into the homemade mini pizzas before he inhaled his box, then Sasuke's. It had fresh tomato sauce with a special combination of spices and herbs, I put in mildly, watching Sasuke's eyebrow twitch minutely. Tomato sauce. He said slowly. What do you mean? You and Kakashi will just have to try it and find out, I responded simply. The pillar crumbled away into a soft pile of dirt. Kakashi chuckled. Enough playing around, children. Today I will take you through my favorite obstacle course. It was created by a good friend of mine. A very, he paused, youthful friend. Oh, God. We got this. Day 4. Here, sensei, I purred, holding out his bento with my one good arm. Kakashi coughed and a multitude of spears pierced through the bento. Naruto dropped to his knees in anguish. Why are you doing this to us? Okay, she cannot be that good of a cook, Sasuke declared. You that sure? I asked him. He hesitated. You can't be. I'm thinking about a meat lover's pizza tomorrow, I hummed. Would that make you feel better, Naruto? Naruto sniffled. I want extra pork on mine. Okay, you can have extra pork, little man. Kakashi clapped his hands. It's time to get to work, my cute little students. Sakura, how long will your arm be in a sling? The doctor said as long as I didn't fall into any more spike pits everything should be healed up in a few days. Great. Then let's move on to obstacle course level 2. If the three of us looked a bit paler at his words, we would never admit it. Day 5. SENSEI, I sung, holding out his homemade bento. I made this special for you. Within the blink of an eye the bento had been knocked out of my hand and nailed to a nearby tree. Naruto let out a wail. What the hell is wrong with you? Sasuke demanded, clutching his own empty bento box. Kakashi blinked. Is it really that good? Tomato sauce. Kakashi rubbed the back of his head. Oh, well. Time for obstacle course level 3. I hate you, Naruto told him. I'm okay with that. Day 6. Kakashi-sensei, Kakashi poofed into a plume of white smoke, only to be replaced by a note that said, Self-training day. See you tomorrow. The three of us stared at the note with mixed expressions. Sasuke shoved his hands in his pocket. I'll eat his bento, then. The hell you will, Naruto growled. Why won't he eat my food? I wondered. It's not like I'll drug him this early on in our relationship. We don't have a safe word, yet. Both boys shuffled a few inches away from me. Day 7. I'm disappointed in you three, Kakashi began before I could even open my mouth. Then I heard what he said, and my heart positively shattered into 1,000 little pieces, because that was the opposite of praise. That was anti-praise that he dished out on us. A low keening noise crawled out of my throat, and I fell to my knees under the heavy burden those cruel words placed upon me. You broke her, Naruto accused, kneeling down and patting my back. I curled into a fetal position, moaning in pain. Why would you break our chef? Sasuke asked, glaring at Kakashi. Kakashi was stupefied. All I said was that I was disappointed. The moan turned into a wail of despair. Naruto and Sasuke glowered at Kakashi. How is she supposed to keep making food if you break her? Fix her, now. Was all Kakashi could say for a solid minute. Then he cleared his throat and kneeled down in front of me. Sakura? How did I break you? You said the D word, I whispered dreadfully. How could you? Kakashi's right hand drifted up and rubbed at his face. Right. Okay. I take it back. I'm not disappointed in you. I sniffled. Promise. Yes. I leapt up onto my feet, eyes bright and a cheerful smile on my face. Yay. Would you like your bento, sensei? I'll eat it if you don't want it, Naruto subtly offered. It would probably be best if I took it. A ramen addict like yourself doesn't know how to appreciate good food, Sasuke, equally subtle, put in. Kakashi hedged. Sakura, would it be alright if I gave the food to someone else, instead? And he eats it on my behalf. I squealed. Does that mean you'll take my bento? Sure, Kakashi said slowly. This is actually a good opportunity to introduce you guys to my summons. I stilled. Oh. My. Madara's sexiness. Doggy time. At last, is it doggy time? Trying to remain utterly cool, I calmly responded. That sounds great. I was certain to keep the high-pitched note out of my voice that time. Wouldn't want to scare off Kakashi from summoning the world's cutest summons ever. You aren't actually going to give a perfectly good meal to summons, Sasuke incredulously stated. Instead of verbally responding, Kakashi knelt on the ground, placing his right palm down. There was a puff of smoke and the cutest wootest whittle puggy-wuggy ever appeared before us. Resist, woman. Resist the temptation. We have to play it cool, otherwise he'll never summon Pakun for us again. I am trying. My body quivered with excitement as I tried to contain myself. I lowered myself to Pakun and whispered, I love you. Oh. My. Madara's sexiness. You are pathetic. Pakun tilted his head. I am pretty lovable. And crazy cute, I agreed, my hands itching to touch his paws. May I please touch your paws? Only good kiddos get to do that. Are you a good kid? Pakun asked patiently. No, Kakashi denied for me, ignoring my squawk of betrayal. Pakun, this my team of minions. Minions, this is one of my summons, Pakun. He looks lame, Naruto muttered. I gasped, snapping my head around and glaring at the sunshine. Naruto Uzumaki, you apologize this instant. That there is the cutest little ball of badassery you will ever meet. Naruto scratched his cheek, still looking dubious. Oh, okay. Sorry, cutest little ball of badassery I will ever meet. Pakun nodded his head slowly. I get that a lot, don't worry about it, kiddo. Kakashi cleared his throat. Returning to the point. Sakura, will you not break down again if I give Pakun my bentos? I would have made doggy treats if I knew you were going to summon the world's cutest dog, I told him, so I suppose I'll have to settle for him eating your lunch. Although I really think you should try it, sensei. Kakashi clapped his hands. Then it's settled. Let's finish eating and we'll try level 3 again today. What a waste, Naruto grumbled. Week 2. Day 3. Every inch of me was sore. I had certainly done extensive workouts before. My sensei demanded each student maintain a certain level of athleticism to attend her higher skill classes, but my body had been built up to that point before I really pushed myself. The lifestyle and athleticism required in the Naruto verse was next level in comparison to my previous life. Not to mention Sakura's body was significantly weaker and more underdeveloped than what I was used to. I had finished my battle with puberty, so I had grown used to a developed body, only to then be thrown into a 12-year-old's body at the start of her battle with puberty. Moreover, Sakura had done next to nothing, aside from dieting, to keep her body in shape. What I was used to being able to do, and what I wanted to do, I simply could not anymore. Not that that stopped me, of course. If I wanted to be a badass, which I did, then I had to suck it up and push through. For the past week and a couple of days, Kakashi had put our team through the ringer, something of which he did not do in canon. If I remembered correctly, after the bell test, Team 7 had been placed on about a month's worth of D-ranked missions before Naruto snapped and demanded for a C rank. The fact that Kakashi decided to physically push us every day, 7 hours a day, noon to 7, instead of half-assedly sending us on D ranks meant that something I did changed his mind. And I knew exactly what I had done to cause that change. I had made him a teeny bit annoyed with me. So if Kakashi being annoyed with me resulted in him becoming a brutal teacher in a vain attempt to extract vengeance upon me, well, how could I possibly deny such wonderful training to the team? It was certainly better than weeding someone's garden. Really. That was my reason for trying to get under Kakashi's skin. Not at all because it endlessly amused me to make the man squirm. Honestly. So, after a brutal session of training, I would crawl my way home and force myself to read at least one chapter out of the texts every night. Never had I been more grateful for an eidetic memory before. I simply would not have been able to retain any information that I read after such long workouts otherwise. The past 2 days, however, I had noticed that I wasn't ready to pass out after the training sessions. In my previous life, such noticeable improvement so soon would be rarer than the sparkling fart of a unicorn. With chakra in the Naruto verse, though, it seemed as though almost all basic knowledge of human anatomy, expectations, and whatnot was absolutely worthless. Which made sense given the stupendous feats some shinobi and kunoichi were able to perform. If they developed the same way as humans from my first life, then it would have been impossible for them to do half the things the manga claimed they could do. Since everything I had seen thus far only further proved that the manga was 100% accurate, I was inclined to simply believe that the humans of the Naruto verse were just special. Keeping that in mind, I took my noticeable improvement as a sign to move on to the next step of my medical training. Despite my legs screaming at me to stop what I was doing, go home, and take a nice long salt bath. Are we really doing this? Do you actually think she'll help us? Of course she would. I thought, indignant. She's one of the nicest people I know. But if her father disapproves, it'll never happen. Well, why would he disapprove this? Because you're a highly suspect person for his precious little girl. I am not okay, so maybe I am a little suspicious, but he doesn't know that. I could practically feel my inner roll her eyes at me. I resisted the urge to stick out my tongue, knowing that it probably wouldn't leave a good impression on those around me. Those, meaning the Hyuga compound guards. Hello, I began, drawing the two men's attention. My name is Haruno Sakura. I was a fellow classmate of Hinata-chan, and I was hoping I could speak with her in regards to a semi-important matter. Is Hinata-sama expecting you? The first guard inquired. Probably not, I admitted, keeping my grin up, but given that she's not a clan head, that shouldn't really matter, should it? It's typically polite to schedule appointments with heiresses, the second guard explained. Oh. I'm sorry, I honestly had no idea. It's alright, the second guard reassured me, while the first one glared at me. Given that you're classmates, I'm sure she won't be bothered. I'll see if she's available. Thanks, I chirped. While the second guard headed inside, I patiently waited. There wasn't much to do aside from wait. The first guard was obviously in no mood to talk with me, and I didn't particularly feel like forcing conversation when I didn't want or have to. The warm breeze ruffled my hair, causing the ends of it to tickle my cheek. I reached up and tucked part of it behind my ear. In the same moment the doors to the compound opened and the first guard came out with Hinata. Hey, Hinata-chan, I greeted enthusiastically. How's it going? Hinata awarded me with a cute, shy smile. Well, thank you, Sakura-san. Ayamo-san mentioned you had something you wanted to talk with me about. I gave her a mock bow. I do, fair lady. Care to join me for a walk? Hinata hesitated a brief moment before smiling again and saying, okay. After a couple of paces heading away from the compound and towards the nearest training ground, I asked, would you like to join me for some training after our team sessions? Hinata's eyes widened. TR training? With me? Of course, I told her, placing an arm around her shoulders. She made a squeaky noise and blushed. I want us to become the bestest of friends, and everyone knows the best way to do that is through training. FR friends. With me. Hinata squeaked out, clear disbelief in her tone. Yeah. You're really amazing, Hinata-chan, I told her, smiling. Besides, since I've decided that I'm going to be Naruto's best friend, I had better become even better friends with his future wife. Her face was like a rose, and then her eyes rolled back and she promptly passed out. I anticipated that, though, which was why I placed my arm around her, and caught her easily. Although my muscles did complain heavily, I swung her over my shoulder and continued to carry her to the training grounds. The Hyuga heiress came to about a minute after we arrived and I had already set her down. When she saw me looking down on her with a smug smile, her cheeks reddened again and she buried her face in her hands. PP please don't say things like that. I won't say it again tonight, I promised, but I'm only being honest. I really do want us to become good friends, Hinata-chan, and I truly think we would do well to train with each other. I meant not. I squatted down in front of her, placing both of my hands on either side of her cheek and smushing her face together so she couldn't finish her nonsense talk. Every time you say something ridiculous like I'm not good, or I can't do that, I am going to smush your adorable cheeks together. Understand? Hinata nodded her head, and I released her before straightening back up. Okay, good. You are an amazing kunoichi, Hinata-chan. Anyone who ever tells you otherwise has to deal with me, okay? Now, back to the point, I want to train with you. Will you train with me? Hinata's hands wrung together, as she anxiously fidgeted. I would like that, but I also have to, train with my team. I do, too, I told her, so how about we meet here around 7:30 every night? If one of us doesn't show up, then we'll assume they're busy. I can do that, Hinata agreed softly. What exactly do you want to train in? Beaming at her, I pulled open my black backpack and presented her with a pink notebook. Inside the notebook was a detailed training regime I asked Eureka to put together a few days ago. I told him I wanted to train one-on-one with Hinata, and that I wanted to become an Irionin. Eureka was probably one of the best people I could ask for about what exactly Hinata needed the most training in, and how to go about doing that. He wasn't typically able to focus on her given that he had a fairly large class, and Naruto, to deal with, but he certainly had many ideas about how to best help her. The man was an amazing teacher, and if anyone would be able to put together a detailed training program for us, it would be him. Maybe also Ebisu, but I had no way of contacting him and he had absolutely no reason to help us. Hinata read through the program quietly, and about halfway through she stopped and looked up at me. A hopeful smile was on her face. This looks very good. I don't know if I can. My hands immediately snapped out and I smushed her cheeks together. Yes, you can. Hinata giggled and managed to say, okay. Releasing her, I clapped my hands together and said, excellent. You okay to start now? Hinata nodded. We'll have to tell father, but I'm sure, he will be fine with extra training. I'll, be right back. Good. Oh, and drop the sand for me. We're going to be future besties, right? So just Sakura will do. She beamed at me. You're so adorable, I squealed, causing her panic. Week 2. Day 6. Kakashi's eyes scanned over each of us that late morning. The three of us were still eating my lunch. Kakashi had yet to eat anything from me. He would, though. I was a stubborn fool, not expecting Kakashi to show up until at least noon. Kakashi said, I've decided you guys have earned the right to take your first mission. Oh, great, Naruto unenthusiastically said. I might have already told the team that D ranks were essentially filled with babysitting, weeding, and running errands. Hinata had mentioned how her team had been stuck on repeating the Tora mission for 5 days in a row, and I simply couldn't resist seeing Naruto's face when I told him about it. The look of utter disgust was delightful. You're a bit of an S. This has already been stated. I'd rather keep training, Kakashi-sensei, I put in, smiling up at him and giving him my daily wink. On the bright side, it seemed like Kakashi was starting to become used to my mock flirtations, and would no longer react. He even started politely declining my bento with outlandish excuses that would give Obito a run for his money. On the downside, he was getting used to it and stopped giving me the amusing reactions I so craved. On the bright side, since he was no longer as angry with me, he more easily gave me praise. If you want to get cleared to take the more interesting missions, you have to do your fair share of D ranks, Kakashi explained. Sasuke frowned. How many do we have to do to take a C rank? 21, minimum, he answered. Huh. That'll take forever and a day to complete, I mumbled, my brow furrowed. Why don't we each take a D rank and complete it on our own? We should compete to see who can complete the most before we reach our quota. At least make it interesting. At the prospect of a contest, both boys, naturally, looked interested. Naruto grinned. Hell, yeah. I bet I'll have finished 20 by the time you guys finish one. Unlikely. You'll probably be the one stuck on one the entire time and I'll have to carry the team. Kakashi scratched the back of his head. The point of D ranks is to work on teamwork. That's for ordinary teams, though, I said, and we're clearly not an ordinary team. Naruto and Sasuke show their love for each other, both boys gave disgusted noises, through competition, and I'm simply so amazing that I get along with everyone. Kakashi shifted his posture to the back of his heels. As long as you take at least 3 missions together as a team, I'll allow the competition. Woohoo! Naruto cheered. Let's get a C rank tomorrow. Idiot, it'll be at least a few days, Sasuke snapped. Maybe for you, Naruto retorted. We're on the same team, moron. Sakura and I are on Team Awesome, and you're on Team Loser with Kakashi-sensei. I want Kakashi-sensei to be on our team, though, I whined, then paused, and slowly smiled at Kakashi. Or maybe we should have our own team, in private. Kakashi covered his eyes with his right hand, letting out a long sigh. Hehehe. You're worse than a pervy old man. Thank you. Week 3. Day 5. It's time, Gigi. Naruto declared, a triumphant grin on his face. We're ready for our C rank, so hand it over. Sasuke and I flanked our bundle of sunshine teammate. Sasuke had his arms folded across his chest, whereas I had my hands behind my back so Kakashi could see them. I now had to always have my hands visible to Kakashi. It was so worth it, though. I was immediately hosed down with a low-powered water dragon afterwards, that knocked me out for the day, but hey. Worth. Sarutobi smiled fondly at Naruto, inhaling from his pipe. Is that so? Kakashi, do you think your team is ready? I suppose so, Kakashi said with a shrug, his single visible eye glancing over to where I kept my hands. I wiggled my fingers in hello, disappointed he didn't react further than that. Sarutobi nodded his head. Very well. I have just the mission for you. Please send in Tajuna. There was a pregnant pause before the doors opened to the mission room and the old drunk himself entered the room. Huh. You know, I kind of thought our first mission might have been something different. Plot no jutsu strikes again. More like fate no jutsu. Tajuna's face grimaced upon seeing us. The hell? They're all kids. I'll have you know that I'm merely a flat-chested young woman, I corrected him. Kakashi placed a warning hand on top of my head. Naruto giggled at me, though, he always found amusement in the ways I could make people squirm, like a true best friend. Tajuna barked out a laugh at that. Ha! I am bridge building expert, Tajuna. Once I have returned to my country, I will have you protect my life while I finish the bridge. What a coincidence, I had a dream about protecting a bridge builder, I exclaimed. I dreamed an evil tyrant was hell-bent on destroying the bridge, and so a giant fox, a baby duck, and I had to band together to defend the builder. It had quite the epic battle in it, let me tell you. Kakashi's grip on my head was starting to become a little uncomfortable. Tajuna nervously laughed. Oh? That sounds like quite the crazy dream. She's quite the crazy student, Kakashi agreed. I beamed under the praise. That was not praise, you praise whore. We had an hour to pack our things and head off with Tajuna. I dropped by the Hyuga residence and left a message for Hinata that I would be gone for a week or so due to our first C-rank mission. Afterwards, I headed off to one of the shinobi supply stores, intent on purchasing some essentials for the mission. I wasn't entirely sure what the gosh darn dilly-dally heck I would be able to change without ruining the story. I knew it was important for Sasuke to activate his Sharingan, hell, I knew there was no way I would be able to stop Orochi friggin' Maru from coming after us during the exam, and I was positive the Hakusai no Jutsu was essential to our survival. I equally knew Naruto needed to begin his encounters with Kurama. The fluffy creature of badassery would take a while to therapy no Jutsu, and it had to start somewhere. Not to mention Naruto had to develop his Nindo. That being said, I really didn't want hotties like Zabuza and Haku to die. It was quite the pickle, really. I had begun my Irionin training with Hinata 5 days ago, and had been relatively successful in my endeavors. Once again, I had to take a moment to appreciate Sakura's eidetic memory, and her superb chakra control. She might have had an awful temperament in the beginning, but the girl clearly had talent with chakra. It was rather sad, actually, that no one took the time to push her to really bring out that talent. I won't let it go to waste, though. Iryo chakra required precise control in order to conjure, maintain, and control. Unlike standard chakra, Iryo chakra could not have any elemental chakras. That was due to the obvious reason of incompatibility for patients. Not every patient could possibly have the same nature as a doctor, and of course their body would reject any strange chakra forced inside of them, not unlike how I reacted when chakra entered my system. The best way to circumvent that was for the future sexy doctor or future sexy nurse to withdraw their own elemental natures from their chakra. After that point, it was all an understanding of anatomy and practice. I had done the typical practicing on fish before I moved on to patching up Hinata's bruises and, exceedingly, minor scrapes. It took significant effort on my part, and I knew it would be a while before I got the hang of it enough to become practical in battle. Unfortunately, I was certainly not skilled enough to save Haku from being stabbed in the heart, or Zabuza from blood loss. But, I was a dedicated fangirl with a little extra cash and some time to prepare. My harem had to start somewhere, right? I arrived at the front gate, my backpack significantly lighter than what I was used to carrying. Not only because of my intensive physical training, but because Hinata actually gave me a couple of storage scrolls a couple days after we started training. Knowing how expensive they were, asked her why, of course. She gave me a shy mumble, we're going to be besties. Don't need them and you clearly do, so, please accept them as a token of my appreciation. She really shouldn't have been so surprised. I would glump her with glee and start nuzzling her. If she wasn't getting married to Sunshine personified, I would have declared us future wives then and there. Oh well. Naruto beamed upon seeing me. Sakura-chan. You were almost late. I grinned at the hero and slung my arm around his shoulder, pulling him in so I could ruffle his hair. I would never be late to a mission, silly. Hehe. Naruto complained, squirming to try and get out from my hair ruffles. Come on. With a laugh, I let him go. Sorry, your hair is too soft and fluffy to resist. Naruto pouted. If it was anyone else, but you, I would have given him a beatdown. I'm sure. I placated him, then turned to Kakashi. We good to go? Ma. I suppose so, Kakashi said, glancing around at this three genin before looking over at Tajuna. Are you ready, Tajuna? Tajuna took a long drink from his bottle of sake before he grimaced and said, let's get this over with. Are you really sure these brats are capable of protecting me? Kakashi gave his famous one-eyed crinkled so it looks like he's smiling, but in reality he might very well be flipping you off in his mind, which was so hot, and said, don't worry. I'm a jonin and I'll be accompanying you. I am more than capable of defending us. Naruto glowered at Tajuna's remark and looked ready to object very loudly, I might add, so I interrupted him in an attempt to defuse the situation with my typical humor. Oh, I know you're more than capable. Okay, going to stop you there, Sakura, Kakashi smoothly said, placing a hand on my head. Let's get moving. 5 hours into the walk we arrived at the infamous puddle. I debated on if I should draw attention to it for some extra praise, or let things run its course. On one hand, I really wanted the praise. On the other hand, I had a great opportunity to have a little fun. Kakashi undoubtedly already knew there were missing nin hiding in the puddle. He didn't know that I knew that, though. With a skip and step I headed over to the puddle. Hey guys, look. A puddle. Even though it hasn't rained for over a week. It's just a stupid puddle, said Naruto, frowning. I love splashing in puddles, I told him. Since it hasn't rained in over a week, I haven't been able to do that. If it hasn't rained in over a week, why is a puddle there? Sasuke asked. The goggle gods must have blessed me, I answered him sagely. That is the only explanation. I then bent over in a great exaggerated show of about to leap inside the puddle before Kakashi intervened with a timely, Ma, I don't think we should be playing in puddles on a mission. But if it's a blessing from the goggle gods, I wouldn't want to offend them. Kakashi stared at me then gave me a nice smile. It could also be a test from them to see if you are worthy for the, rainbow stick story. I gasped. You're right. Oh no, I don't know what to do now. Why don't you? Whatever brilliant suggestion Kakashi was about to finish never came because the missing nin leapt out of the puddle and threw a long chain towards Kakashi. In the blink of an eye I saw the chains wrap around Kakashi and pull him. I didn't actually see him get pulled apart. I saw the logs immediately replace him, but apparently everyone else around me got to see him be pulled apart because Naruto let out a shout of horror. Why? He probably used a genjutsu during canon. Considering how you reacted when he placed you under a genjutsu during the bell test, I doubt he would use that again on you during a live combat situation. Oh. That actually makes complete sense. I moved quickly to stand in front of Tajuna, a kunai pulled out and my posture shifted to defensive. I was pleased by how I had been able to follow the two generic henchmen with my eyes, when I most certainly would not have been able to at the start of my new life in the Naruto verse. Naruto had frozen still in utter fear, and the two missing nin lunged towards him. Before Naruto could properly defend himself, Sasuke acted swiftly and threw a kunai towards the men. They separated, one continuing towards Naruto and Sasuke and the other headed straight towards me and Tajuna. I felt the man's killing intent, and for a brief moment my heart skipped a beat. Adrenaline rushed through me and I felt a keen sense of utter thrill. The very idea of fighting someone always got me tingling in my spars, but now in a life-or-death situation. I was positively giddy. A grin lit up my face and I moved towards the man, kunai in my left hand and a bare fist in my right. Unfortunately for me, though, before he could reach me Kakashi's arm jutted out right before the man and slammed into his neck. The missing nin retched before passing out, and I couldn't quite hide my disappointment. Kakashi, entirely at ease, readjusted his grip on the two henchmen that were then unconscious. I didn't even notice Kakashi take out the first one. Something we'll have to work on. Yo, Kakashi greeted, dropping the men to the ground before brushing off his hands on his pants like he had been touching dirt previously. Sorry for not helping you out sooner, Naruto. I didn't think you wouldn't be able to move. Naruto flinched, as if Kakashi had told him ramen had become illegal in Konoha. Kakashi turned towards Sasuke. You did very well defending your teammate, Sasuke. His lazy eye slid over to me. Sakura, you went straight towards defending our client per the mission parameters, so good job. I have to ask, though, how you knew they would be in the puddle. Came my response as I thought fast, the goggle gods warned me, of course. Kakashi rubbed the back of his head. MN. Sakura, you know I know you're chakra sensitive. You don't have to lie, you aren't in trouble. When you sense people, though, you... Oh, hey, look, Naruto's hurt, I quickly said. I didn't sense them, though. Well. It's hard to sense anything when we feel everything. Chakra is everywhere in this world. It's disorienting when I focus on it, so I'd rather not do that. Naruto blinked in surprise. Huh? Oh, this thing. They're from Kirigakure, I said, so they probably have poison on their weapons. I have some standard antidotes in my pack, so hang on. While I rummaged through my pack for some antidotes, Kakashi turned to face Tajuna. Sasuke, tie up those missing nin, I need to talk with Tajuna. Tajuna gulped nervously from Kakashi's obvious undertone of irritation. Sasuke tied up the henchman, using rope Kakashi provided while Tajuna began to spill his life story. I located the antidote and gestured for Naruto to stand beside me. Naruto glumly gave me his hand to examine and I had him swallow the antidotes. Deciding that his cut was minor enough that it would heal on its own, I wrapped a bandage around it after placing some disinfectant on it. So you see, the bridge is our last hope for the people. I'm sorry I lied, I really am, but I'm begging you to please help me, Tajuna said, bowing lowly to us. Kakashi gave a sigh. This mission is above our parameters. We aren't equipped to handle this. Naruto even was too scared to react properly. I won't be. Naruto growled, his hands shaking. Kakashi pointedly looked at said shaking hands. Naruto shook his head vehemently before pulling out a kunai and then proceeding to stab his right hand that I had just doctored up. I face-palmed at that. That shit is not cheap. Damn it. In triumph, Naruto held up his now bleeding profusely hand that no longer shook. I can take it. We can do this, Kakashi-sensei. Let's finish this mission through. Kakashi sighed. Except now you're going to die from blood loss, so we really have to get back to Konoha. No. No, 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 no. I can't die this way. Naruto screeched, jumping around, clutching at his hand, and generally spazzing out. My hand snapped out to grab his injured hand. My tongue clucked in annoyance at having to throw away perfectly good gas because someone had to make a dramatic point. Relax. I can heal you. Kakashi cocked his head at me, and even Sasuke looked over since he had finished tying up the henchman. I've been training to become an Irionin for a while, I told him, placing my hand over the wound and calling forth my chakra. Textbooks are pretty informative. So you've been essentially training on your own? Kakashi casually inquired. I nodded my head, carefully transitioning my chakra from the standard pale blue to the calming pale green. Carefully, and slowly, I stitched Naruto's muscles and skin back together. The wound wasn't deep enough to have damaged any nerves or arteries, but it did strain his cartilage and of course tore his skin. Finished, I withdrew my hand and beamed in pride at my work. Not a single mar on his skin. Kakashi let out a low whistle. That's certainly impressive. It normally takes months under an apprenticeship before acquiring the control to do that. My cheeks warmed and I giggled in nervous embarrassment from the praise. Ihiha. Praise whore. Naruto was amazed. Wow, Sakura. You really are awesome. I shuffled my feet and scratched the back of my head sheepishly. Ah, it's nothing. Tsunade-sama wrote out very detailed instructions, and something like a little scratch is easy to heal. Wait until you see what I have planned later. Anyway, I said loudly, still feeling all warm and happy from Kakashi's praise, I vote we carry on with the mission. And I feel like Naruto and Sasuke would agree with me on that. Grunted Sasuke, not denying his support. Of course. Naruto agreed. Kakashi chuckled. Ma. Alright. Let's head out, team. That's it for part 1. Thank you for watching and see you on the next video.